Do you have a beginning reader or a student that is struggling to read? This workshop will take you through how to assess your students' reading abilities and then give you practical tips on how to help them develop into strong readers. Hi, my name is Angela. I am a wife to Stephen, mother to 4 mostly sweet kids, and we have been homeschooling for 9 years. We're still going strong. This is our banner high school year with my oldest. My son is in junior high. I have 2 elementary students, and that little sweet one in the middle is my daughter Madeline. She is the inspiration for this workshop. I taught my first 3 children to read almost effortlessly. I was practically patting myself on the back, telling myself what a great teacher I was. Then my youngest came along. And when I can barely teach her to identify letters and their sounds, I begin to get a clue that the first 3 learning to read so easily had very little to do with my ability to teach them. Before this mom gig, I was a 2nd grade teacher in a Title I school, and I had spent hours and days in workshops learning how to teach struggling readers to read. I'm thankful for that experience now because it helped give me a good basis to work off of when I'm dealing with my daughter in her reading struggles, and just gave me a lot of great resources to use with her now. So in this workshop, we are going to be learning how to, or talking about building the relationship with you and your child. We're going to talk about some fundamentals and tips to use as you are teaching reading, and then we'll briefly discuss how to assess and go over some resources that might be helpful to you. So the most important aspect of teaching your child to read is the relationship that you have with them. We want you to focus on the relationship that you have with your child. Teaching a child to read requires a lot of patience. Right off the bat, they need to know that you are on their side. They're not going to take risk unless they know that they are in a safe place. I'm going to say that again because it's that important. Your children won't take risk in their learning if they don't feel that they are in a safe place. The best way to do this is to make sure that when you sit down with them, that you're in a good place, free of your own distractions, that you are not thinking about laundry, that you're not thinking about the things that you need to get done as soon as you're done doing your reading time. Make sure that you are just have a positive attitude going into the time with your daughter or son. You want to make this time together with your child a time that they look forward to, not necessarily because they like learning to read, but because they treasure that time that they get to spend with you. Choose the environment that you work on together very carefully. Pick a quiet and calm place and/or a time a day when both of you are at your best and free of distractions. Have a place set aside just for the 2 of you. Call it your special reading place. Or if you don't have extra space in your house, be creative and tell them that while the 2 of you are sitting there, this place becomes extra special. I always ask my daughter if she has her thinking cap on, and then I ask her to pretend really hard as I ask her really hard questions to double check if her cap is actually working. Of course, some of those questions are just silly questions like, what color is the sun? And I make it sound like those questions are really hard just to make sure that she is working within her thinking cap. It's important that you bring your child close to you during this time. Place your chair next to theirs, sit on the couch together, or even cuddle up under some blankets. It's important that they associate this sometimes stressful time with something loving, especially if you have a child who is struggling to learn how to read. Let them know that you're excited about helping them learn to read and that you look forward to this time with them each and every day. And do make sure that you tell them how proud you are of their progress when you sit down with them. If you want this time to feel more special, maybe even have a small snack or drink to share before you get started, just so that they have that time that they're looking forward to, thinking, oh, reading time is really awesome time with mom. You want this time together to feel unstressed and natural. And at the end of the lesson, you want your child to have warm, good feelings when they think about reading. Hopefully they will think, sure, reading is hard, but time with mom is pretty awesome. Sometimes when we sit down together, I like to start off with a picture book that she chose or that I wanted to read to her, because I know it's something that she really loves, and I can work on some reading comprehension skills in a little bit sneaky way before she even thinks we've begun our lesson. So reading is fundamental. I really just wanted to say that, but it's true. These are the steps that learners take when they're learning to read. They all start with phonemic awareness, they move on to phonics, and they start to build their vocabulary, and the bottom two should be flipped, but fluency is what comes next, and then reading comprehension. These are all the natural progression steps of learning to read. The first one is phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is the ability to identify and play with individual sounds or phonemes in spoken words. I knew that my 5-year-old wasn't ready to begin reading when we were doing flashcards, and I was holding up the letter A with her, and I was saying, "Look, Maddie, it's an A. A says ah. What sound does A say?" And she said, "Ah." And I said, "That's right. A says ah." And then we would move on to the letter B. And I'd say, "What letter does B make?" And we'd move on through a couple letters, and I would go back to the letter A. And I would say, "Okay, what sound does A make? Or what is this letter?" And she would very excitedly say, "G." And I would start over. "No, Maddie, A says ah. Remember, it sounds like apple." And we would do this over and over and over again. And she just wasn't ready to remember the sounds or identify her letters. So we had to set reading aside for the majority of her kindergarten year because I just didn't want to push her. According to the National Reading Panel, the amount of phonemic awareness that a child has been exposed to before the start of school is a strong factor in how well that child will read by the end of first grade. This doesn't even have to be formal learning. When you are with your children, when you come across a letter, just point it out and say its sound. You're already singing your ABCs most likely, and you're already pointing things out in books when you see them, but phonemic awareness shouldn't be a chore. When you're at the zoo, you see an animal, just, point out and say, "Look at the zebra. What sound is at the beginning of the word zebra?" And, talk about those sounds when you're out and about, when you're just naturally around things that make you think of letters, point it out to them. An easy way to assess whether your children have mastered letter recognition is to present your child with a list of letters and ask them to name each letter. You can also have them separate the letters from piles of letters, numbers, and symbols. We're going to see that in a video that I did with my daughter recently. You want to have them tell you the sound that each letter makes as they're going down the list or separating them from a pile. It's best to assess their understanding of letters and sounds when they're not in order, because otherwise our children learn, they are already learning that their ABCs are in order, and so they memorize their ABCs and the sounds of their ABCs in order. So sometimes we don't always pay attention to whether or not, when they're telling us a letter, that it's a letter that they actually know or just one that they have rote memorized. If you want to know if your child has a good understanding of phonemic awareness, have them break up the sounds. So show them the word cat and have them tell you what each individual sound in that word makes. Change the beginning or end of that word to a different letter sound and see if they can still identify the word. In this video that I'm going to show you, you're going to see me do an assessment of letter identification with my daughter. I have this page in your handouts. But most children memorize their ABCs in order. They typically don't have any trouble identifying their letters on a paper that has them in order, but when you take them out of sequence, you get a better idea of what they actually know. You're going to see here in this video that we're still working on some letter identification. Okay, Maddie, today we're going to look at these letters and we're going to try to figure out what letters you know and what letters you still need to practice. We're going to read down this row right here. Can you tell me what letters you see? E. Keep going. What letter is that? F.
F. I. B.
L.
L. O.
Big letter.
P.
R.
R. U.
Good.
X. A. B.
D.
D. J.
G.
G. J.
Good.
S. B. E. H. K. N.
Q.
Q. T. V. W. Z. M. P. V.
Very good. Okay. Now what I want you to do is we're going to look at for some of these same letters in here. I'm going to tell you a letter and you are going to try to pull that letter out of this and tell me what sound it makes. Okay? So let's start with, at the beginning, let's find the letter A. Can you find the letter A out of here? Now there's all kinds of letters and numbers mixed up in here. Good. What sound does A make? Good. Just let's stick it in a row and we'll make a row of our ABCs. Okay, B. Can you find a B? It can be a big B or a little b, uppercase or lower. Good. B. What sound does B make?
B.
Good. What about C? Can you find the letter C? Good. You found it. Good. What's next? A, B, C,
D.
D. Do you see any D's? Uppercase or lowercase? Let's look at it. Perfect. What sound does that make?
D.
Good. Next. A, B, C, D,
E.
E. Good.
E.
No, what sound does E make?
Eh.
Eh. Good.
D.
It does make the E sound too. You're right. What do you think is next?
F.
F. So you can see in this video that it's a perfect example that when we were doing the mixed up letters on the paper that she had some trouble with being able to determine what letters were, but when she was trying to say the letters in order as she was pulling them out, she didn't seem to have any trouble with knowing what letter came next because in her mind she is remembering the ABC song. Okay, in this next video, This is a simple letter sound game that's very easy and no fuss way to assess letter sounds and their understanding of them. The bonus in this is that they love being able to use their toys and other things around the house to do it. If you decide to do this game, the only thing you really need is some paper and a marker, and then just some items around the house. A fun bonus would be to just, instead of you putting the toys in a bucket for them to pull out, have them hunt around the house themselves and look for items that begin with those letter sounds. This is an extra challenge for you. So we were just practicing our letter sounds, and now what I want you to do is to take these letters, and not all of them. We're only going to do a few of them just to practice, but we're going to take the letters. Let's say them first.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J.
Very good. Okay. I have a bucket full of different things here. Each of these things in this bucket have the sound at the beginning of it of one of these letters. So the letter A, what sound does A make?
A.
Do you think you can find something in this bucket that starts with the A sound? What can you find in here? Can you look in there and find something that starts with the letter A? A, A. This is going to be, we're going to call this a rug, not a carpet. We're going to call it a rug.
Yeah.
Good. Keep looking. Very good. What does this start with?
A.
What is it? A. Good. What is it?
A.
Good. Put it next to A. All right. What about this letter? What sound does B start with?
B.
B. B. You see anything in there that has the B? B? Anything else that has B? B? We're going to call that a doll or a girl. Butterfly. Very good. What sound does this make? Good.
Cow.
Cow. Very good. All right. And what about this?
Dog.
Good. Okay, we're going to move over here to, what letter is that?
E.
E. What sound is E?
A.
Good. And what about F? What sound does F make? Okay. So you see that this was an easier activity for her because we had already gone through her letter sounds and practiced pulling letters, and she was able to immediately look for the items and know the beginning of their sound. So that's just a fun little extra activity to assess their understanding of sound. Phonics is the ability to connect the letters of the written language with sounds of spoken language. Phonics instruction is the next step after phonemic awareness and teaches children that specific sounds belong to specific letters and letter patterns. Phonics instructions help children recognize and associate the sounds of the letters and letter patterns in the words that they read. Once they can do this, they will have a better comprehension and increased fluency in their reading. If your child is spending all their time trying to decode words, by the time that they get to the end of a page, they won't even remember what they read. I have this just really easy game I included in your handouts. It's not really a game, but it's phonics practice. You can grab just a bunch of popsicle sticks and write the consonants on them. Most of the consonants, not all of them, but most of them will work for this activity. And then the paper has a whole list of word endings. So this game can be used over and over many times for many different practices, letter sounds. You just grab a popsicle stick and you go through each of the endings with the consonant letter. She loved being able to choose her own consonants in there. You can either have them blindly grab a popsicle stick or let them choose their own consonant letter to go through the different word endings. But this is great phonics practice because it's important that they're able to, even with made-up words and silly words, be able to say the sounds of the letters. A quick way to assess whether or not your child understands the concept of phonics and able to apply it in many different ways is to play rhyming games with them. We love this little match it rhyme game. I don't know where I picked it up, probably at some consignment sale or maybe a garage sale at some point, but I think Amazon sells it too. I've looked it up before, but it's just a quick little puzzle game where they have to rhyme the words. It's definitely a challenge for my daughter as she goes through it, but because we've done it so often, she's really picked up on rhyming patterns. So you're going to want to do this with different word endings, and rhyming is just fun in general. So it's something that comes very easily to kids. They're able to rhyme with made-up words and silly words, and those are all good ways to practice phonics. Ask if they can change out, when you're doing phonics practice, if they can change out vowel sounds in words to make new words. That's another great way to assess whether or not they really are understanding how word patterns work. Okay, moving on to vocabulary. Vocabulary are words kids need to know to communicate effectively. It can be defined as the knowledge of words and their meanings. The purpose of teaching vocabulary is for children to understand words and to use them to acquire and convey meaning. The more vocabulary a child knows, the greater their reading comprehension will be. About a year ago, I came across an article that basically said that there are two indicators of children having a large vocabulary. One, the education of the parents at home, and two, how many books are found in a home. The largest influence of students' vocabulary is the sheer volume of reading they do, especially the wide reading that includes a rich variety of texts. Basically, what that article was saying is that the more your children hear you speak higher level vocabulary words, and if they read a lot of books, they will have the proclivity to internalize and use the vocabulary they have learned. See how I threw that fancy word proclivity in there? One way to increase reading vocabulary is to have students read a wide variety of both fiction and nonfiction literature. It's best to teach vocabulary in context. It's much harder to teach it out of context. But while you're sitting and you're reading, use the words that come directly from the literature or textbooks. Circle words that they don't know, and then come back to them. Discuss it. Help them use context clues to determine the meaning of the words. So if you come across a word that you're reading and it's kind of a word that you feel that your child is not familiar with, just stop and pause and say, hey, what does that word mean? And if they don't know, read the sentence around it and model for them how they can help understand the meaning of the word. Tell them, well, what's happening? Look at the pictures. What's happening in this passage right now? What's happening through the picture? How can those things help us determine what this word might mean? If you're going to teach out of context words, like with flashcards or word lists, you can use something like this vocabulary mind map. This is a little bit more advanced than what I would use with my beginning reader, but it's something that I use with my elementary daughter, and definitely something that I use with my junior high and high schooler when we're working on vocabulary words. You want to teach word parts. In words, you want to teach the prefix, the suffix, the root of the words. You want to teach the synonyms and antonyms of the words. Give them examples of non-examples. Give them non-examples of the word, sorry. Make the word a part of your everyday conversations. Be a detective and look for words in your reading and everyday life. We play this game and we love it. I have talked about this on my Facebook page, give an example of it, and I have put it in a blog post somewhere, but we love this game, Word Wizard. This is a game that we play where we pick a vocabulary word, probably sometimes 2 words a week, and we learn what it means and how to use it. And then where it says players, we put, everyone in our family has it plays this game. And the goal is to use this word as much as possible in your everyday life. So as we're eating dinner, as we're doing our schoolwork, as we're in the car, wherever we're at, you're going to try to use this word. And you win by using the word in a way that doesn't draw attention to it. So if you say the word and nobody else catches the fact that you use the word and calls you on it, then you get a point. This has been such a winner in our household, all the way down with my pre-reader. She knows some vocabulary words that, like one of the words that is on the screen here is abhor. Like, she can use that word without any problem in regular everyday life because we have used the word so often in our house through this game that she knows what it means and how to use it. So it's definitely a winner game for vocabulary in a house. I included this in the handouts as well. If you want some actual words and their definitions, I have that in my blog that you can go check out. So when you're doing learning and teaching vocabulary, you want to use it in context, out of context, make up stories with the vocabulary words, create silly questions with the words, have them draw pictures of the meaning of the word. Anything that is going to get that word stuck in their head, but most importantly, use it. Don't just study it and learn it and then move on, but you need to use the vocabulary, and that is going to be how your children create meaning around it and remember it. All right, fluency is the ability to read text accurately and quickly. Fluency is your child's ability to effortlessly and correctly read, speak, and write English. Fluency in reading should include consistent speed, accuracy, and the use of proper expression. If they can read a book and catch on to the meaning of or the way that the author intended the word to be spoken, then you know they have fluency down. When they get it that there is some excitement in the text, or that there is a little bit of foreboding in there, and they understand that as they're reading it, you know that your child has fluency down. Fluency is achieved when a child is no longer focusing on how to read. You can help increase your child's fluency by reading or teaching them sight words and giving them reading material that is appropriate to their level. The more confidence they have in reading material that is skill appropriate, the more risk that they will take, and the better their reading fluency will be. Fluency develops through lots of reading practice. In this, let me go back. In this video, you're going to see a younger version of my son practicing his sight words by reading a Dr. Seuss book. I had pre-written several sight words that were in the book, red fish, blue fish, and as I was reading the book, he was listening for the sight words and pointing them out. For the story, one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. Okay, can you say your sight words for me?
Yellow, little, now.
That word is no.
No. Blue, some, has sunny.
Very good. So whenever you hear one of those sight words as I read, I want you to point to them, okay? You ready? So you got to listen very carefully. We're not going to read the whole story. We're just going to read a few pages of this book. I want to hear how well that you can, I want to see how well you can listen. Ready?
Okay.
1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. Do you see a sight word there? Good. Black fish, blue fish, old fish, new fish. This one has a little star. This one has a little car. Say, what a lot of fish there are. Yes, some are red and some are blue. Some are old and some
Are you?
Do you hear a sight word there? Some. Good. Some are sad. Some. And some are glad. And some are very, very bad. Why are they sad and glad and bad? I do not know. Go ask your dad. Some are thin. Jack, we're going to practice our sight words for the story.
Okay.
1 fish.
Oh, let me go back. Okay, so continuing with the sight words from our book, after that activity, I had typed up a few pages and he used the same cards from the previous lesson in the video to identify the sight words in the story. I had him highlight them as he read it. So he read the story, or we read it together, and he highlighted the sight words. This just gives an added way for him to practice his fluency in his reading. I have a sight word game on my website too, but it's an easy one that you can throw together yourself. We just wrote up some sight words. You can write them in different color markers, and I placed them on cards around the house, and he had to go on a hunt. He had this paper that had all the sight words on there, and whenever he came to a sight word, he colored in the color that was on the card. So if this, right there in the picture, you can see that the word was, I think that word was there, and it was probably, it looks like it was in green. And so when he found that word, he found it on his paper and he colored that in, okay, I guess it's blue. I'm looking at it now. So he colored it in blue on the chart that he had. And so it was super fun. It was a way to get them up and moving. The idea here is just to make learning fun. Have them always have their brain engaged as much as possible when they are doing reading time. So reading comprehension is the ability to understand and get meaning from what has been read. Comprehension refers to a child's understanding of what they are reading. Reading comprehension won't happen successfully until they have mastered the other components. So tips for reading, for increasing reading comprehension. Choose age level appropriate books. I like to use the 5-finger method. What you do is you're just going to open a book, whatever book they choose, to any page. Have them start reading. Hold up your hand, and if they can get to the end of the page with less than 5 mistakes, so I lift up my finger or put down my finger for every mistake that they make, and if they can get to the end of it without making more than 5 mistakes, then it's at an appropriate reading level for them. It's just enough to challenge them, but it's not going to overwhelm them. And the second one I have here is have your child read out loud. Use a whisper phone, and I've got a picture here of what a whisper phone is. It's all it is I've seen fancy versions of this being sold in school supply stores, but I just have a PVC pipe. It's just a curved small pipe, and the idea is that while they read, they talk into the phone and they hear themselves reading. I'll be honest, and I can't say that I remember the science behind why it's so effective from my trainings in my earlier days, but I know it has to do with the brain making an auditory connection so that they're not only using their brain and eyes to read, but they're hearing what they're saying, and they're hearing it more clearly and directly. So another thing to do is to retell the story that you're reading using props. I have a page in this handbook too of a story retelling that you can go through and use as they're reading or after reading. But while they are reading, ask questions. Ask them who the main characters are. What's happening in the story? What is the problem in the story that the characters have to solve or deal with? How does he or she feel about that? Where are the characters at? To ask what the setting of the story is. You can do all of the story retelling with props. You can do it with blocks, Legos, have them act it out, whatever it is that's going to help them to remember the story as they're going along and get their brain engaged in the lesson. So maybe you have a child like mine who's been struggling to read for a while, or maybe they're reading and you're just trying to figure out if they're on grade level or with other peers their age. And if that's you, then know that the first thing you have to do is just consider the age of your child. Maybe your child, if you have a child that is 9 years old or below and they are struggling to read, this is still not time to be concerned about their reading. They just might need to be taking things a little bit slower than the rest of your children. Just think about that. Just remember, I mean, it's one of the great reasons we homeschool. Not every child learns at the same pace as everyone else. I know it can be hard to remember that when you are surrounded by other children who are your children's age and they're doing things far more advanced than your child, but just remember that we all learn at our own pace. I have included a worksheet in here that if you think your child might have a learning disability, you can look over. I've listed out here a handout about information on dyslexia because that is what most people are concerned about. A couple things just to wrap it up. Many children don't learn until they are in 3rd grade. So it's, again, consider your child's age there. Their brain still needs time to develop and they just aren't ready. Stick to the basics if this is your child. Shorten the lessons and don't make a big deal about it. But if you are concerned about whether or not your child may have dyslexia or something, you can look at the worksheet that I've included that has some markers. If you see 3 or more markers on there, then maybe that's something that you want to talk to your pediatrician about or a learning specialist. But remember that no single test can determine if your child has dyslexia. Usually there are multiple tests that have to be given. But if you do see some things on that worksheet that gives you cause for concern, and there are several items on there that you think your child might be doing or not doing, then it's definitely worth a discussion with your doctor and a visit to a specialist. So there you have it. Hopefully you have found some value in these tips and tricks. Come say hello to me on Facebook or stop by my Schooling with Grace site and check out what other resources I have available to you in your schooling. And don't forget to grab your conference swag bag that you can find included in your materials. Thanks for sticking with me through here, and please don't be shy. Come say hello.